I would say from the beginning stages, when we first meet with the customer, we do set the expectations. So it's really important for us to have the kickoff to explain this is what's going to happen. And especially at the beginning, we conduct weekly meetings with the customer and we set expectations in regards to tasks, the project charter, but also have a project plan. So on there, we have designated tasks by customer, and we understand that there could be some bumps along the road. So that's why we want to make sure that we have the subject matter experts and really making sure, okay, so if something cannot be completed, we explain to the customer what can happen if something gets delayed, but it's the transparency to make sure that they're aware of what can happen. We do have things outlined for them and we explain it in detail of what is to be expected. And if there is a bump, like we walk through with them what we should do next. So the customer service approach is really important to us to make sure that everyone is aware of what's happening and what are the next steps to solve for that. So we understand that every implementation might be a little different. And that's where we want to make sure that we have that delicate touch or approach to each customer to meet their needs.
Some speed bumps that we sometimes see during the implementation process are things that we can see ourselves from doing this so many times and implementing so many new programs is you become ingrained really with the customer and you understand who drives what and who makes a final call on something. Our weekly calls are really helpful because it does paint the picture. We do make sure to communicate what's upcoming, and by pushing X out, that also pushes out YZ, and then which ultimately could push out the go live date. So we try to get ahead of it and make sure that they're aware. But internally, we also have our own internal meetings. So I think we plan for that as well. We just try to be flexible. That's the value out of using Eastridge. We are so focused on service and customer service that we're not super stringent sometimes with our timelines, and we're able to be really flexible to meet the needs of the customers because we do understand that things may come up that prevent us from hitting a certain deadline. We are able to also plan on our side of things to ensure that it doesn't push out any kind of other deliverables or timelines further down the road.
We understand that not every program is going to run the same. And we know that we can think outside the box. Eastridge is really well known for that. If there's a challenge, we really partner with the customer to say, okay, what's the best solution for you? We're in staffing. So we're dealing with people, we're dealing with suppliers. And so there can be some curveballs that happen from time to time. And so it's really the partnership that we have with the customer to say, okay, here's the problem, here's our solution, here's our recommendations, how are we going to solve for it? So it's the thinking outside the box and understanding that not every customer's need is going to be the same.
One of the biggest speed bumps is just that the client oftentimes doesn't know what they don't know, and we tend to have an idea of where we're going to run into challenges. And to give you an example, one of the industry verticals that we heavily work is in pharma and med device. And so in implementing a medical device, oftentimes a client will say, we've got all these contractors out there, and we can never assume that they're all just regular temporary workforce. And so when we get in that, we always know that we're going to see drug research firms, and we may see instructors and independent contractors in a wide range. And the process for onboarding those and being able to drive compliance and consistency with a variety of different types of workforce takes time because the strategy for each group is a little bit different. So understanding that, having that experience, knowing that we're going to come across this enables us to build in the proper amount of time for that supplier onboarding and vetting, to have the conversations with those suppliers, to understand what they do, where they fit, but also the strategy around, we know what we're going to run into. We know we're going to run into companies that are not familiar with an MSP, unlike staffing providers who 90% are well familiar with MSP. A drug research firm or an analytics firm may not be familiar with it. So we know that's going to take a little bit of extra time, a little bit of additional information. And we also know that through the value proposition for those groups of workers and for the client associated with those groups of workers, we need to have a strategy and what that looks like. And does it make sense for us to get involved in that space for them? And can we bring value to that?